I know, it's still not the usual setup, but you know what? That's not going to stop me from making videos. What's up, everybody? It's JJ Buckets. Today I'm going to cover Isaiah Collier for the draft profile videos. Usual drill before I get into things, make sure you're leaving a like on the video. You already know what it does. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Plus, if you plan on doing any responsible sports betting in the near future, just make sure to check out my link in the description below. At the beginning of the year, there was a lot of talk that Isaiah Collier could even maybe be the first overall pick in this year's draft. After his college season, I really don't think that's going to be the case anymore. Quite frankly, if we're talking about the Raptors lens specifically here, this is a guy I'd be looking at that if he does slide in the middle of the draft and he starts kind of tumbling in those like teens picks, maybe he's still available at 19 when the Raptors are there. And at that point, I think that's where you're looking at this guy. And I know I'm not giving a good first impression of him talking about, him sliding on draft day and him being a former projected first overall pick, and that's or potential first overall pick, and that's obviously very much so not the case here, but I do think there's still a decent amount to like about his game, so rest assured about that. When it comes to Collier, I think his size is one of the things that makes him stand out immediately at the point guard position. He's listed as, I believe it was 6'5", around like 210 pounds. Again, obviously bigger than your usual point guard, I guess. And in particular, as a personal preference, I always kind of love the bigger point guards. So I like the size here. In particular, I like how he uses this size. He's got good strength and he uses it effectively as a slasher when he's attacking the rim. Obviously, that's when he's at his most effective. In terms of his scoring ability, that is the biggest, and I mean biggest selling point of the ability, is just being able to go downhill, being able to score at the basket. But I think the one thing that really lends itself well to Collier here as well is paired with that ability to, go paired with that ability to attack the basket, just downhill. He's also got a pretty damn good handle, and he's pretty shifty as far as that handle goes as well. So it's not like, this guy's just bulldozing every time, although he's quite capable of that. He's also decently creative, like with his finishes around the rim. Like, it's not just, I'm going to use my superior strength at the guard position to beat you that way. He's got some creativity to it, and that's kind of one of the things that helped him rebound, I would say, after a bit of a rough start at USC. He did pick up his scoring efficiency overall. I believe he shot 49%. I'm sure you've already seen it on the graphic by now. But yeah, good, like really good stuff there when it comes to his slashing. I think there's also some upside as well with just his overall playmaking, which naturally is the thing you'd probably want out of your point guard. There's some decent vision there, and while it's not quite perfect, and I'll talk about that in the weaknesses, I do think you can envision this guy being able to run your offense as the guard, although I do think maybe a little bit of patience is needed. And obviously off the bat, I think, we're talking about backup point guard here. Like, we're not talking about starter by any means. I do think there's a lot to like in terms of that, but I do think there's going to be work needed as well. The weaknesses with Isaiah Collier. Right off the bat, the one that stares at you like a sore thumb or whatever the expression is, I think that's what the expression is. His shooting efficiency. It's rough. It was a little rough. From the 3-point, he looked uninspiring. If I'm remembering the percentage correctly, he shot 33.8%, which it could be a worse figure. Like, you got to give him that. Like, it could be worse, but when you kind of look overall, like, his effective field goal percentage was quite weak at 53.3, and the thing that troubles me in particular is you'd like to see him converting his free throws at a better rate than he does. His free throw percentage was 67.3 on the season, and one of the things that I actually didn't mention in the strengths that I wish I had, but I'm mentioning it now, is he's pretty good at getting to the free throw line. He gets there on a fairly consistent basis. He has a good free throw rate, but then when he's actually shooting them, like, he's only converting them at a sub 70% level. that's concerning, right? Like, if you have this guy who very clearly has an ability to get to the bucket the way that he does, he's obviously going to get hacked, he's going to get fouled, he's going to go to the line. You want to see him knock those down. And I know I've talked about this in the past, and I mean it every time that I bring it up. I look at free throws sometimes as just kind of a barometer for like overall shooting ability. It's not the only thing I look at by any means. Just mechanically looking at the shot, I think is very important too. Like for somebody like Buzelis, for example, I remember looking at it and thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, like the mechanics are there, but you know, the numbers maybe don't necessarily back it up. But you know, you look at the guy and you're just like, yeah, like he's got a good stroke. I don't know if that's the case here with Collier, and it's a little concerning, especially when you're looking at the player that he is. Why would defenses respect him from the perimeter? If he's got the slashing ability that he does, they could just back up and kind of wait for him at the rim. I guess a little similar to the Nikola Topic problem, where we know Topic is also a great slasher and not an effective shooter, so that is very limiting in terms of your offense and in terms of how defenses are going to guard you if you can't put that threat into them of hitting it from the perimeter. And I think this is something that's fixable, but it's one of those things that will need to be fixed. You know what I mean? It just glares at you, it stares at you, like you can't overlook it. And speaking of the other thing that's just really hard to overlook is his struggles with turnovers. Oh boy. So he had 3.3 turnovers per game, which is not a comfortable thing to look at when you're looking at your lead guard, right? Like, again, I've talked about it. If we're talking about the Raptors, we're talking about him as a backup point guard. But 3.3 turnovers, especially if you're looking at the assist to turnover ratio, doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look pretty at all. Now, I do think there's times where you can throw on the tape and you can watch Collier, and I think you see somebody that is capable with his passing. Like, I don't think his vision is bad. I just think sometimes he can get a little flustered, and it forces him into just some very poor reads offensively, and just reads that you shouldn't want to see your guard making. So what do you folks think? That's my look at Isaiah Collier. I think there's potential. I think there's upside. I think there's reason to look at this pick and think to yourself, yeah, I could talk myself into it. Again, I would say this is specifically more so for the Indiana pick, and there's a chance that he's not available by then. There's a decent chance of that, I would say. But at the same time, again, for like some of the red flags that I talked about, I also think he genuinely might still be there on draft night for the Raptors to pick up of that pick. And again, his red flags are coachable. Let me know your thoughts on him as a prospect. Again, if you have any other prospects that you want me to take a look at, as usual, drop them in the comment section below. I obviously still have plenty more of these coming. I think Tyler Smith might be the next one that I take a look at as an interesting guy. And as an aside here, actually, I did an article on this stuff not too long ago. I'm currently writing for Give Me Sport. So if you want a breakdown kind of some of the players that I like for team needs with the Toronto Raptors, go on Give Me Sport, just search Toronto Raptors. I'm sure you'll be able to dig it up. If anybody wants it specifically, I guess I could also toss that in the description or something. But yeah, just something to be mindful of if you're tired of listening to me and you'd rather just read. Usual drill at the end of these videos. If you're still here and watching, thank you. Hit that like button if you haven't done already. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Other than that, it's been JJ Buckets. It's been a pleasure, and I will see everybody next time.